Donald Trump is once again claiming victory in a tariff battle. But this time it wasn't just about trade. On Friday, Washington and Mexico City agreed to expand a deal to stem migration from Central America to the U.S.
We've signed our commitment to contributing to migrants not crossing through our national territory to reach the United States. We would never do this by violating the human rights of travelers, and that starts with human rights, the right to live freely from misery, the right to life.
As part of the deal, Mexico promised to deploy around 6,000 soldiers, mainly to its southern border with Guatemala. It's also agreed to host tens of thousands more Central Americans until their asylum requests are processed in the U.S. In return, Trump backed down from imposing 5% tariffs on all Mexican goods, due to start on Monday. Something he warned could still happen if the country doesn't cooperate. Mexico is the U.S. third largest trading partner, with more than $600 billion in cross-border commerce last year. It's also the second biggest buyer of U.S. agricultural products after Canada, with nearly $20 billion worth of farming exports expected this year.
Mexico has agreed to immediately begin buying large quantities of agricultural product from our great patriot farmers.
A joint statement released on Friday, however, makes no mention of agricultural trade. And Mexican officials haven't confirmed his statement. While some Republicans praised the president's negotiating skills, Democrats were less impressed.
These are agreements that Mexico had already made, in some cases, months ago. They might have accelerated the timetable, but by and large, the president achieved nothing except to jeopardize the most important trading relationship that the United States of America has. There are 6 million jobs in this country that depend on U.S.-Mexico trade.
U.S. officials say they've turned away or arrested more than 140,000 people crossing the Mexican border in May. That's up 30% from the previous month and the highest monthly level in more than a decade. Trump's use of tariffs to achieve other goals is considered by many, even within his own party, as bad policy and could do little to curb the flow of people from poorer countries in Central America. Sibel Karkus, TRT World.
Well, let's get more on this now with Jeffrey Tucker in Great Barrington, Massachusetts. He's the editorial director at the American Institute for Economic Research. Welcome back to the program, Jeffrey. Donald Trump, as we know, was quick to claim credit for this breakthrough, but how big of a deal was this agreement?
It wasn't a big deal at all. I mean, you've got here a case of an arsonist also claiming to be the firefighter. Everything was fine. We had already had a deal with Mexico, what Trump had negotiated, a new NAFTA. And they're just out of the clear blue 2 weeks ago, suddenly he's talking about 5%, even 25% tariffs against Mexico. It caused panic on the part of basically everybody, you know, producers and consumers and every large bank and every trade theorist. It was a shock, and Trump might have backed down because he was intimidated by, especially the Republicans, and both the Senate and the House were furious about this because starting a trade war with Mexico is not going to accomplish anything for anyone. So he backed down and then made these claims that he had this new deal, but as you mentioned in your opening segment, it turns out that there was already some negotiations that had been settled on the migrant problem back in December and through March. And then there was, in addition to that, this very strange tweet that claimed that Mexico was going to buy some more of our grains. Well, Mexico already buys, is a huge importer of American grains, and no Mexican officials could even confirm there was any kind of new deal. So there was a lot of flim-flam going on, and we don't know what is true and what wasn't true, but it seemed like a much ado about nothing.
Right.
I agree with you, too, that the threat is far from over, though.
Okay, interesting. We also know that US automakers like GM and Ford have a significant presence in Mexico with their production facilities. We had executives in the lead up to this deadline warn of potential job losses and the impact that tariffs would have on their bottom line. How much of a factor do you think that was in Donald Trump's thinking?
I have to believe that it did play some role in causing Trump to back off, which is which is, to my knowledge, the first time that protests on the part of the American commercial class of producers have actually had an impact on what Trump did. But I think that the political losses to Trump would have been so devastating that he finally saw better, because yeah, it would have been plant closings and all kinds of job losses on all sides, and that certainly wouldn't have helped Mexico either. So I have to believe that Trump might have with some reluctance, pulled away. But you notice that in this agreement, that they're scheduled to revisit it every 6 weeks. And if anybody thinks this threat is gone, you should check out a Treasury Department document that was released in May. It's a watch list of countries that the Trump administration believes we need to completely change our trade relationships with. And as we know, Trump has a wild kind of obsession with trade deficits, right? And if you look at the list of countries that are on this watch list, China's number one, Mexico is number two. Other people on the list are like Ireland and Vietnam and Malaysia, Germany, and Canada. It sounds crazy, but I've been telling you this. I've been on the show for, I think, probably a year and a half, saying this again and again. Trump is concerned about these trade deficits. No other trade economist agrees with him, but he's got this kind of obsession. And he wants to flip it. He wants to run trade surpluses with every country in the world, which you cannot do if you're the dollar and you're the world reserve currency. So this is a completely, really, I would say, extremely dangerous course. But I promise you, and you can take this, you can bank on this, that within sometime in the next 6 months, we're going to hear once again about a tariff threat with Mexico. And so the threat is far from over, which profoundly affects investment decisions on the part of American business and Mexican companies too. You've got a lot of regime uncertainty here, and a lot of fear has been introduced by what I would consider to be very dangerous and reckless trade policy on the part of the Trump administration.
Okay, let's see if your fears are realised over the next few months. Jeffrey Tucker in Massachusetts, thank you as always.